So I have been asked not to swear in my presentation by my wife and our COO, but I can't guarantee it. So I've put this. I thought this would be a better idea to put a warning up beforehand. Right. So what I want to try to do now. Has everyone found today quite useful so far? Awesome. The whole point of Estate Agency X, obviously, I'm the CEO of Iceberg Digital. So, when I say the whole point of Estate Agency X is learning, there is also an element of it's nice to have everybody stand and look at our logo for a bit. But the whole point of Estate Agency X really is, as I said at the start of the day, I was fortunate enough, just completely by accident, around 10 years ago, maybe a little bit less, I fell into this group of entrepreneurs who, like Dan and people like him, that had all built £100 million businesses and just kind of looked at what I was doing at the time and just thought like, shit, I've just been like, I don't know what the fuck I've been doing for 10 years, right? So, and since then, like, been on my own journeys with Iceberg and built up various different businesses, and I like the idea of bringing some of those people that we learnt from to this industry, because for some reason or another, don't ask me why, I have this emotional attachment to estate agency. I worked as an estate agent when I first left school. I worked in an ice cream shop when I first left school, which then led me to work in an estate agency, as probably for most people that sort of stuff, I guess, happens. And I've worked as a mortgage advisor, and I've been a buyer, and I've been an investor, and a landlord, and a tenant, and a seller. And if I didn't have to work 6.5 days a week and money wasn't an issue, I'd probably choose to be an estate agent. I enjoyed that. So I've always stayed connected with estate agency in some way or another. And I talk to lots of estate agents, and I have lots of estate agency owners as friends. And it annoys me sometimes when I sort of think about the journey that I've been through and some of the things that I learned and some of the mistakes that got solved. And I just think it'd be good to bring in more outside people into our industry to kind of let us see like more stuff than, like I was saying before, like how to do, I don't know, door knocking or shit like that, right? So, so for those of you that know me, this will be a bit boring. For those of you that don't, I'll give you a little bit of background on myself, and then I'll try and dig into combining some of the stuff we learnt today, how it fits into estate agency, and where I kind of see it going. So, as I said before, I'm the CEO of Iceberg Digital. I've got around 20 years experience building up various different companies. Some of those companies were huge successes, and probably more of them were huge failures. Actually, you're not allowed to say failures, are you? Learnings. I wrote a book called Where Did My Industry Go? That was all about the kind of the future of business, really. I focused it on estate agency. The book went on to be number 2 business book in the world, was a bestseller in 4 different categories. And it's amazing how many friends you suddenly get when that happens. You get asked to go and speak at events as an expert, and then once you go and speak at events as an expert, you get asked to go and do like TV stuff as like a guru, and it goes on and on and on and on and on. Exactly how Dan was talking about when he spoke about the whole key person of influence thing. So what I want to talk about in this presentation is the difference between a transactional business mindset and a lifecycle business mindset. It's quite important, especially for estate agency. To do it, I'm going to just try and rewind back in time a little bit. So the idea is to look at these 2 mindsets, and to do so, I want to just kind of go backwards to the 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s. I spoke about some of this stuff recently at an event that Sanjay was kind enough to invite me to talk at Sanjfest, which was another great event. But I'm just going to try and expand upon it a little bit. I've got a little bit more time than I had then today. So what is the transactional business mindset and how did it all come about? If you're my age or older, then some of this you'll remember. If you're younger, it will just seem like we're talking about something that happened 200 years ago. But you've got to try to immerse yourself in what I'm saying here, right? So if we go back to that period of time, the 60s to the 90s, there is no internet, right? It's not like there's internet for some people, if you can know how to figure it out. There's no internet at all. Right? There's only, well, from my childhood, there's only 3 TV channels, even though the telly's got like 8 buttons on it. There's only 3 channels. No one watches BBC Two, so you've only really got BBC One and ITV, and only ITV shows ads. So just try and think about that for a minute. Like, you know when you sit at home and you think to yourself, like, I wonder where would be a good place to go on holiday, or let's have a look, 10 best places to go on holiday. You can't do it. So you sit at home and think, I wonder where would be a nice place to go on holiday. You just go, don't know. That's it. And then, literally, there's no way of doing any research. You might think at the weekend, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to pop along to the travel agents, get a brochure, and then when I think this again next week, I'll be able to sit and look through the brochure. So the adverts that you watch on telly, they're actually quite interesting. I can remember as a child, we'd sit down, we'd watch a TV show, and you'd all sit and watch the adverts as well together. Right? Someone would go to the cupboard to get the bag that's got the crisps in. And you'd all share out the crisps. Like your granddad gets the one at the bottom that's been in there for years, and you just sit and you just watch the adverts. They're quite interesting. There's no mobile phones, so the telephone is the weapon of choice for a salesperson, as in the landline, because if you phone someone and on their landline, there's no caller display, there's nothing like that. The phone rings, it could be anyone, it could be important. So you're going to get through to these people by accident, and regularly you'd sit and watch TV and get cold calls, and you'd take a lottery as to who's going to answer the phone, and someone gets lumbered with it. So the biggest brands at the time, companies like Our Price. Okay, they seem a bit retro now, but these guys are monsters. Like, they've got over 300 stores. They're floated on the stock exchange. Companies like Woolworths, over 1,000 stores in the UK. Not really any high streets in the country that haven't got one of these stores. I'm still not sure what they actually sold, but they had an awesome pick-a-mix section. You've got companies like Dixon's. If you're looking for anything electronic, that's where you go. Dixon's, 530 stores, again, floated on the stock exchange, big monster companies. Blockbuster's a global brand, like literally as big as it gets, 9,000 stores in the US alone. They've got all the money. They're a huge giant of a company. Countrywide, 850 offices plus. Bought for £1 billion. It seems crazy now, right? £1 billion they were bought for in 2007. So the way that these companies do marketing, remember, we're talking back 60s to 90s. The way that these companies do marketing is they look at a geographical area and they say, right, these people, they haven't got any access to doing research. I mean, they weren't thinking this at the time, obviously, but this is the principle of it. They've not got any access to doing any research of their own, other than those ads that go on television. We can't necessarily afford to run ads in primetime television. So how do we find the people in the market, forgetting what Dan said, the people in the marketplace that are looking for our specific product or service or whatever it might be, they want it, they just don't know how to find us. And they do it through something called interruption-based marketing. So the way that they do it is they go, right, if we can interrupt as many people as possible with the logical reason as to why somebody should use our product or service, and they're looking for that product or service, then a transaction will happen and everyone will be happy. Okay, so if I'm looking for a new washing machine and I see an advert on the television for a new washing machine and it's the best and it's won awards and it's 499 quid and it's for sale in Dixon's, that's it. Like, there isn't anywhere for me to go and do research. Like, I go to Dixon's, I buy the washing machine, and I go home. So that's how it works. So big brands win this battle. The big brands they've got more money than anybody else. You can't really keep up with them. They can interrupt more people, but it works all the way down the ladder. So small businesses, maybe you interrupt people with leaflets. Okay, maybe you put leaflet in their letterbox to interrupt them going in and out of the house. Logical reason. If you're thinking about selling your property, we've won awards. We sell more properties than anybody else. You should use us. It's quite useful at the time if I'm looking to sell my property. 1994, things start to change because in 1994, what happens is along comes the internet. So it doesn't really get into mainstream use until probably closer towards the end of the 90s. Probably doesn't get into mainstream use in a estate agency until like 2018 or something like that. But it comes along in like 1994. And it changes everything because it gives people access to loads of information. It's a bit scary at the beginning. People can't really get their head around it. A bit like blockchain this morning. You know, even though John did a great job of explaining it, it still kind of leaves more questions than it answers. And the internet was the same. You know, people would say, "Oh, you know, it's amazing. You'll be able to go to San Francisco Library and read all of the books they've got," and you just couldn't picture it. It was like, how's that going to work? Now it all makes perfect sense. But along comes this influx of information. 2004, the world changes again. As Andrew said, Facebook comes along. And what happens with Facebook is that you're able to keep touch with all of your friends forever. Even people that you maybe don't consider friends, you're able to keep touch with them forever. But the idea is that you go to school or you go to university and you connect with those people, and then you make your way in life and you stay connected with them. And they generally kind of keep track of what you're up to and where you're going, and you don't even have to really talk to these people. Your network just grows and you know their friends and friends of friends and so on and so on and so on. And then 2007, this kind of change is complete because along comes the iPhone. So what happens is that in these 13 short years, everything we know about marketing just goes out the window. Literally just gone like that. Because now, if we think about when you didn't have the internet and me and my family are sitting eating our crisps watching the adverts, and then we fast forward and everybody carries this mini computer around in their pocket with the entire world's information on it. They carry around all of their friends in their pocket and their friends' friends if they ever want to ask for a recommendation on anything. So we're all the cleverest people in the world, because I was surprised when Dan said what colour's the Google logo. I thought it's going to take someone about 3 seconds to literally go on their phone and go blue, right? Because you don't know, but you can find out in seconds. So now what happens is if I'm looking for a washing machine and I see an advert from, well, not Dixon's because they don't exist anymore, but I see an advert from somebody saying this is the best washing machine in the world, it's 499 quid. I don't go to the shop and buy it. I just go on my phone and I go, reviews are not great, there's another one that's better. It might be more, it might be less, but the last thing I do is rush to the shop and buy it. I don't need to be sold to anymore. Basically, people just want to be helped. Comes back to Andrew's presentation that he did. So the result of this is quite catastrophic, really. These companies just basically disappear. But the crushing thing about it is that it's not just Dixon's that disappeared. It's all small electronic shops. It wasn't just Woolworths that disappeared. It's pretty much all bric-a-brac shops that got replaced by Amazon. And then it wasn't just Our Price that disappeared. It was all record stores. And it wasn't just Blockbuster that disappeared. It was all video stores. Just gone. Now, there's actually still one Blockbuster store left in the whole world. It's in Arizona, I think, or somewhere like that, and they still run on floppy drives. People go and have selfies out the front of it. I might go myself one day, actually. So the reason these companies died out is because they're just focusing on the transaction. They knew that all this new stuff came along. They had the money, they had the marketing managers, they had the budgets, they had everything in place so that they could adjust. But they still were just focusing on the idea that if I present a logical option to you as to why you should use my product, you'll go ahead. So now, well, we can put logical reasons in on social media, and we can send it out via email, and we can do all this other stuff, and we can interrupt people in all kinds of different ways. But they never figured out like how it's actually done properly through all of those mediums. They just tried to get more transactions today. And I speak to a lot of estate agents who the very first thing they say when I say like, what do you need? Why are you investigating things? Why are we having a conversation? They might say to me, I need more. I want more instructions today. It's like, I haven't got like Paul Daniels in the back somewhere. Like that's just a magic wand. It doesn't work. It doesn't matter how many times you spam people with emails. If they don't want to sell their house, there's nothing you can do to make them want to sell their house. So who would be next to die out on that? That slide there, actually, I used to have Debenhams on that slide, but it's had to be replaced now because they've already died. So could be these guys. W.H. Smith's is a great example. I said this. I was talking to my mum the other day about that actually, and she almost made me feel like she was disappointed in me that I said W.H. Smith might go off the high street because it's an industry kind of it's a legendary company, right? It's been around forever. But let's think about W.H. Smith's. They really kind of exist on the basis that if you happen to be walking past W.H. Smith's needing some pencils, it's a great option for you, right? Otherwise, what's the fucking point? Literally, there is nothing in the shop that you would need that you would get up and go to W.H. Smith's for. Amazon's got a button that says buy now with one click, right? And it's got all of that shit in there and more. So literally, like they'll go next. So what? But what about these guys? Countrywide, right? Everyone knows the downfall of Countrywide. Everyone knows what sort of a perilous situation they're in at the moment. What happens if they go? What about the knock-on effect of all those other companies? I know it might be easy to go like, yeah, but Countrywide, if they go, won't matter. But that's not how it worked with these other industries. And we can learn from these other industries. We don't have to figure it out. It's already all been figured out for us. We can just look at how it happened, who survived, who died, and what did they do. And if these guys go, actually, it does cause a big ripple effect. It is a big problem. I can imagine already the news knock-on effect of someone like that going is damaging, hugely damaging for our industry. So as I said before, like why did they die? These companies, they had literally, an endless budget. I can't even imagine what Blockbuster's budget was. Blockbuster's had a meeting with Netflix where Netflix said to Blockbuster, look, we've got this great platform. We could team up. You could invest some money and we could do this together. And Blockbuster just laughed them out the door. Just said like, just sounds ridiculous. And if it ever did catch on, we'd do it without you. And now look, right? Netflix is worth what, 150 billion? So why did these companies die? And it was because they were transactional only, and it's a really pressing issue in a estate agency that most companies are not paying any attention to. So what is the lifecycle business mindset, and how do these guys do it? Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Google, how do they build these businesses? Dan already spoke to us about the zero moment of truth. And there's a really important part of the zero moment of truth is the title, the zero moment of truth. So if you imagine the process that someone goes through when they buy products, the 0 to 1 bit of the process is the research stage. The 1 to 2 is the transaction, and the 2 to 3 is whether they ever come back again. And all estate agents that I know, except for maybe a few are extraordinarily in the way that they work, they're focused on the 1 to the 2 bit. So even when prop tech comes along, a lot of the time it's like, guess what? I saw an app the other day. Guess what? You've got a listing, bing, you can just upload it to a portal and you can book a viewing and you can do this and you can get an offer. But what about getting the listing? Like, that's the bit. Like, what about getting the listing? Once we've got the listing, we kind of know what to do with it. But what about getting it? And that's the zero moment of truth. That's the research that Google did, where they looked and they found out the 7-11-4 stuff that Dan was talking about. They found that actually the customer journey isn't as simple as we might have thought. In the 60s to the 90s, we considered if somebody called us in on a sales pitch, whether they walked into our store to buy a washing machine or whether they asked us around their house for evaluation, if they didn't go ahead, it was like, fucking time waster, you know. And they were kind of time wasters because I didn't have any way of ever reaching them again. Once they left the store, they're gone. Right? That's it. I don't know who they are. I can't ever, there's no such thing as nurturing at that point. So the cycle works like this, like Andrew was talking about. Close, close, close. If it doesn't happen today, it's never happening. They discover you, they have a meeting of some sort, they buy from you, that's it. But actually, because of the framework that these companies, Google, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, have laid out for us, we can now see all of this. And the thing is that they already knew that when they built these tools. So like Google didn't just think, oh, this is awesome. We could use this to search the internet. Like Google thought to themselves like, wow, if we get everybody's data, then we can sell them ads. So we can see this journey. Like, it would be a dream if we could do that. They already knew that. How you hit the emotional side of the brain, like Dan said, 7-11-4. The customer journey, it requires companionship. They figured this out. If you go on this long journey with somebody, guess what? They buy stuff from you, and they don't even argue about the price. So the 7-11-4 shows us that whilst estate agents, so many estate agents I talk to, and some of you will remember having this conversation with me previously, say there's no way we could charge more than, 1% in our area. Like, no way. I know Fine and Country do it. I know I've seen someone else does it, but you don't understand that where we are, people are literally, they'll sell a house for like 100 quid. So we're already expensive, right? You all have had that conversation, right? But it doesn't make any sense. Like, look at this comparison, Samsung versus Apple. And it's not an argument about whether a Samsung is better than an Apple phone, like, because an Apple phone's better. But right? No, but seriously, right? It doesn't matter whether you're a Samsung user or an Apple user. But the point is that the Samsung has got better memory than the iPhone. It's got a better display than the iPhone. It's got a better waterproof rating than the iPhone. It weighs less than the iPhone. It costs less than the iPhone. And everyone buys the fucking iPhone. How? That's just ridiculous. It's because no iPhone users, myself included, know or give a shit what memory their phone's got. I've got no idea, right? I don't know what RAM it's got. I don't know what the display is. I don't know any of that stuff. Something inside me just says it's just the best phone. And so Apple can run ads like, Samsungs are great, but it's not an iPhone. And every Apple user would be like, yeah. Right? It's just an emotional thing. That's how 7-11-4 works. You get people to get emotionally attached to your brand. Fine and Country could do the same thing. Like Simon can do the same thing. When I was talking about Simon earlier, and when I was saying everything else is a compromise, yeah, and I know you're going to use that on your valuations, and that's what leaves people, if they've already 7-11-4'd themselves, and they say, I'm just not sure, you're so expensive. I just don't know if I could pay that. It's like, no, I totally understand. If you need to compromise somewhere else, I understand. And someone would, that's how it works, right? So how do you actually do it? I think everybody can understand that makes sense, but how and why does it not work in a estate agency? So the first thing you need to have a data-driven company. What that actually means is that you have to grow an audience, and those people that you once considered time wasters are actually potentially more valuable than the ones who do some sort of transaction with you right now. Because the time wasters haven't yet finished their 7-11-4 journey, so you still have the opportunity to do it. The software that estate agents use, your Vibras, your Repits, your Dupix, you can name any of them, it doesn't matter. Even some of the ones that have come out at the moment and say like they're incredible, they don't have the right infrastructure behind them because they work on a transactional basis. So you put people in, if let's say for instance you do a valuation with somebody, you put them in the system, you chase them, you put them in a 1 to 31 system, you put them in a callback diary, you chase them and ask for the transaction. Eventually they stop taking your phone calls and you've got nothing left to talk to them about, and they just sit in your database. Nothing happens with the data. One of a certain industry expert I was at a conference with recently said, and millennials are the problem because they just leave the data and they don't get on the phones and they don't do anything. All they want to do is press buttons and da 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 da. And I said to him, like, millennials are not the problem, they're the solution. They're not expecting to put data in a system that does fuck all with it. They're expecting it to actually do something, rather than I put the data in the system, and then what does it do with it? Nothing. You have to get the notepad, and then you phone people up, right, and forward the date when you're going to phone them next. It's like, what did I put it in the system for? I don't know. That's just what we do, right? It's just not really. It's things. This is what I'm saying. It moved in 13 years so fast. We kind of all got just a bit dazed by it, and it was like, it's computers. Let's put our stuff in computers. The computers don't do anything with the data. So the way that companies try to 7-11-4 people is that they communicate across all of these different platforms. And a lot of estate agents do this. Okay, so you create content, you're pushing that content out on Facebook via email, you've got an instant valuation tool, you've got stuff going on your website, like Dan said, you're binge ready. If someone goes on your website, you talk to people on the phone, you've got ebooks, you've got all of this stuff going on, and you push it out across all these different channels. And I think it was Perry Power, I saw on social media the other day, said he's got 21 different bits of prop tech that he now uses to do that. Like that's somehow a good thing, right? So that's how they do it. And the idea behind it is that you push people through this funnel. Okay, so you create content to start with that is designed to be for people who are not really they're not in any way interested in selling their property. So they're not interested in hearing from an estate agent. So you might create some content. You can only create content that you've got the kind of the authority to talk about. So, for instance, there's no point me creating some content about how to cook a great Sunday roast. It's like, what do you know about it? Right? But a chef can. So as an estate agent, you could talk about the local area and property, and anything that falls into those two things. So that could be interiors, it could be prices, it could be restaurants, schools, any of that sort of stuff, population, whatever it might be. So at the top of the funnel, you might say, okay, let's create some content for people that are not thinking about using an estate agent, but we just want to get in front of them. So maybe we're going to create some content of the top 4 schools in the local area. If your children are moving from junior school to secondary school, here's some videos of interviews with the headmasters. Or here's the top 5 restaurants. Or here's some offers that you can use when you go and use, Joe's Pizza Place in the next few weeks. And we push that content out on social media and email, maybe even print. We push that out to as many people as possible. So we're back on interruption-based marketing, but that's fine because what we've done is we've made the content useful for them and on the face of it, not that useful for us. There's no call to action. You've got to resist the idea to put something, let's just tag something on the bottom that says, and if you want a free evaluation, right? Because what generally happens with that is that you show that to the valuers and they go, we're not going to get much business out of that. And it goes through change after change after change after change and you end up with a free valuation ad, and like, you know, a link at the bottom that says find out about restaurants, right? So resist that. The only purpose of it would be to start 7-11-4 in somebody, okay? So that's the awareness stage. So we're creating content there, and then maybe we're creating some content around here that's, if you are thinking of selling a property in the next 12 months, but you don't want to talk to an estate agent yet, then you should download our ebook of the top 6 things you might want to start thinking about. And then down here, maybe you've got your instant valuation tool sitting around this part of the funnel that people can do if they're one step closer. Down here, they're actually calling you in for a face-to-face market appraisal, and down here they're signing up with you. So that's what companies do, but that's how they try to 7-11-4 people. The problem is that for most companies, the funnel is broken, and they're just wasting their money and time trying to do that. So I'll give you an example of that, and a lot of you will probably be able to relate with this. So there's this lady, she is considering moving at some point. So what you do is you pump out an ad on Facebook about your instant valuation tool, because it sounds like a good thing to do, right? So we pump out the ad on Facebook about the instant valuation tool, and she sees it because she lives in the local area. So she clicks and she does the instant valuation, and that means she's somewhere around here in the funnel. So she does the instant valuation, the lead comes through to you as the estate agent, you phone her up asking if she wants a face-to-face valuation. She says, no, I don't want a face-to-face valuation. You don't need to call me anymore. I'll let you know when I'm ready. So you throw her in the bin, right? Because you've got nothing else to do with it. Your systems, they don't do anything with people that are not ready to transact now. So she then goes on to Facebook again the next day, the next week, whenever it might be, according to Dan, like the very next minute probably, and she sees the instant valuation ad again, which is just fucking pointless, right? You're wasting your money pushing the ad in front of somebody who's already done an instant valuation, and she doesn't like it because now it's just annoying. So instead of her moving down the funnel, she actually goes the wrong way in the funnel. She starts moving away from your brand because now you're annoying her, and she wishes she'd never done it in the first place. And because of that, most people's funnels look something like that. There's tons of business just falling out of it left, right, and centre. How would these guys do it if they were running an estate agency? If they had that running in their system, how would it work? So the way it works is that they don't do this. This is mental, right? This is what leads you to running 21 different systems. What they do is they do this. They have a person in the middle of it, and the systems automatically do the other stuff. You haven't got to figure out when to send emails out or what ads to run on Facebook. You haven't got to figure any of that stuff out. The systems already do it. The systems track what people look at and what they do, and then it puts the right things in front of them so that they move through the funnel. That's how it works for modern businesses. So if someone's come along and sold you this idea of this amazing email marketing platform, and you can log on and you can design your own campaigns and you can do this and you can do that, well, literally you're just wasting your time. Like, just the systems do it all. You don't have to do that. You can just be an estate agent and just be good at that. So in that system, what happens is she is thinking about selling her property, so she sees the instant valuation ad, she goes on Facebook, she fills out the instant valuation ad. Next time she goes on Facebook, the system knows, don't show ads, because let me go back, right? Because she is in an ecosystem here, it knows, bing, she's done an instant valuation. So in Facebook now, don't show her instant valuation ads anymore. So what it does now, next time she goes on Facebook, she does her instant valuation, next time she goes on Facebook, it shows her whatever it is you've decided someone who's done an instant valuation ad should see next. Maybe it's a video that says, in this year alone, we've sold over £500 million worth of property in the local area. We just got voted best estate agent in, the Southeast. We've won these different awards. If you're thinking about selling your property and you've ever done an instant valuation, you should probably consider having someone around your house for a face-to-face valuation, because the instant valuations are just algorithms. So you might actually be underestimating what your property's worth. If you want to book for a face-to-face valuation, click the button below, right? And only people that have seen instant valuations would see that ad. So you haven't got to interrupt everybody with it. Most people couldn't give a shit about all that stuff. But it will be relevant to her. So she sees that ad and she's happy again. And maybe she takes action, maybe she doesn't. But it continues her on the 7-11-4 path of thinking like, these guys are great. You know, we know what she's thinking all the way through. Like Andrew laid out, this is what the person's thinking, this is what we do. And the system will just figure it all out for you. And because of that, she moves the right way in the funnel. And she, at some point, just comes out the other end. One more kind of point around that to try and hammer this home. I don't know if many of you remember the original kind of portals. So 1999, when the portals were small enough that they would bother advertising, it's used by 246 estate agents. Right? That was a selling point. Rightmove, Property Finder, Asserta Homes. There was no data feeds. So you used to just log on to the portal and add your property manually. That's the way it worked. Find a Property were the first ones. They used to send you a little CD. I don't know if you remember. You could load it onto your computer and you could keep all your properties in there. But for most of them, you'd load them on manually. Websites were quite new as well, so you'd load in properties onto your website. But it wasn't that much of a big deal. It was just a new process that we kind of had to get used to. And then bang, Rightmove came along, and it was like, oh, I better load these properties onto Rightmove as well. And then Property Finder, and then Glowbricks, and you know, all of these portals came along. At one point, we were just inundated with portals, and then they made data feeds. The software provider said, "Oh, guess what? From our software now, you can automatically just upload your properties. You just put it on our software, and it goes to the portals." And we just take it for granted now. But imagine if you bumped into somebody at this conference, even who was an estate agent, and you got talking about, oh, you know, what's the biggest hassle in your business? And they said to you, like, uploading properties to portals, I mean, that's a right pain in the arse. And you'd be like, what do you mean? It'd be like, you know, you have to manually do this. And you'd be like, are you fucking crazy? Right? That's, standing on this side, that's what it's like when I listen to people saying like, yeah, we do, you know, we run Brief Your Market and we have an instant valuation tool and we've got someone who does content on social and someone else looks after our Facebook ads. And that's what it's like listening to it. It's like, there's systems that do all this. Like literally, you don't have to do any of that stuff. You're just wasting your time. So most agents at the moment are like, they're just under all this snow of crap that they have to deal with in marketing. And it's kind of pointless. It just stops them from doing the things that we spoke about, or the previous speaker spoke about, which was how do we create an incredible, exceptional service, an incredible estate agency? Let someone else worry about who sees what instant valuation ad. That's just someone else's job. I saw a post yesterday on social media from an industry expert saying if you don't learn how to do Facebook ads, you know, you'll go out of business or something like that. And I just think, like, why would you want to sit and learn how to do Facebook ads like you're estate agents? Sit and figure out how to be awesome estate agents, how to do all of the things that will make people go like, wow, I wish we were using those people, not how to run Facebook ads. Like, Facebook change it every month anyway. So another example of the poor use of data in estate agency is that companies in today's world, they use data to build defensive walls around their company. And estate agents don't do that. And that is probably the most risky thing in our industry. So to explain this, I wanted to use Google as an example. So effectively, Google's just a search engine, right? And there's loads of search engines. So what's the point? Like, I mean, what makes Google so valuable? Possibly the most valuable company on the planet. It's just a search engine. I mean, you know, Yusuf, our CTO, he could build me a search engine just like Google, probably take a day, right? It's really not that complicated. But the thing with Google is that where most products age and get worse, Google actually gets better with time. Right, there's 3.7 million Google searches run every minute of the day. And Google knows all of your deepest, darkest secrets. Right? It knows all of your worries. It knows what you're worried about with your children. It knows what your aspirations are. It knows so much that it knows the question you're asking before you've even finished typing it. Right? And it gives you the answer. It's got 20 years worth of data in this system. And that's what makes Google so valuable. Anyone can build a search engine and no one can build Google. Literally, no one can ever beat Google at what they do unless somehow you can fast forward to having 20 years worth of data and 3.7 million searches run every second. So Google have got to fuck that up in a big way to get knocked off of that perch. I just swore again, didn't I? Yeah, sorry about that. Estate agency. Let's look at that in estate agency terms. Imagine if you could have a business that just got more valuable just by being open. If you could make it so that it became more difficult for someone to go into competition with you just by being open. Right? That's how companies work today. So I'm going to put it into some examples of an agent that actually uses some of our systems to do this. Right? They use one of our tools called BAIT, which is all about valuations. It stores valuation data and then it nurtures those potential valuations and blah, 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 right? So they're a fine and country agent, so they've got high fees anyway, but the principle doesn't matter. They've got one office, and in the last 4 months of them using the BAIT system to put their market appraisals into that system, they've won £350,000 worth of business, been instructed on £350,000 worth of business. That's not the price of the house, that's just the fees, right? They lost £64,000 worth of fees. And for most estate agents, that's the only numbers they look at. It drives me mad because I talk to people and they say, we've got awesome conversion rates. We're at conversion rates 80%. It's like, bullshit, as if it is. I mean, that's not possible. But then you dig down, it's like, basically, for most estate agents, they have these three categories. There's people that instructed us, there's people that instructed another agent, and then there's a bunch of people that don't count. They didn't instruct anyone. It's like, what? So if I go out on 10 valuations, 9 of them don't instruct anyone, and 1 of them does, we've got a 100% conversion rate. That doesn't make any sense. And that's how most people look at it, right? But in the BAIT system, what you can see is that over that 4 months, he's got £1 million worth of business that his system is now putting the right stuff in front of them in Facebook, putting the right emails in front of them, telling him when the right things are, when the right time is to do stuff, and just nurturing them automatically. Okay, so if we start scaling that up, if he does that in 4 months, then that's £3 million worth of business every year. After 5 years, he's nurturing £15 million worth of business. That's not prices of houses, that's fees. £15 million worth of fees in his system being communicated with 24/7, 365 without him lifting a finger. Most estate agents have got more than that in their database, and it's not being communicated with in any way, shape or form whatsoever, unless they do this, let's export this and let's send them an email and let's see if we can get some more transactions today. There's nothing more than that. There's no funnel that is automatically pushing them through over the course of years. So, firstly, the two things that happen here is no one can go into competition with this guy. After 5 years, I can't just open up an estate agency and go into competition with him. He's nurturing £15 million worth of fees. He's in and out and amongst so much stuff, like Google, I can't just break into it suddenly. It's going to take me 5 years to get to that stage, and by then he's got another 5 years worth of stuff. And his company becomes incredibly more valuable because the only way of me opening up in his area is to buy him. And I'm not just going to pay him for his lettings book and a bit of goodwill for his pipeline. I've got to pay him some serious money now. That's why Google's so valuable. They've got all the data and there's no way of getting it unless you want to buy Google. So let's look at these guys again, right? Just still think they can't be saved. They're just looking in the wrong place. That's all they're doing. Look at the numbers, right? What if countrywide, with 850 offices, did this? Average UK property price, 250 grand. Average fee of 1%, 2,430 quid. 20 valuations a month, not out of the question, would mean that they are nurturing 50 grand's worth of business per month in fees, per branch. 850 branches, 41 million pounds worth of fees they would have going into their nurture system every month. In just under 500 million of data and potential business in a year, 1 year, they would have 500 million pounds worth of business being nurtured 24/7, 365. Like, how quickly does that company become worth $1 billion again? Not fucking long. Like, literally about 12 months, it becomes worth about 4 times that. So play the long game. Countrywide they're just trying to figure out how to do more transactions. There are no more transactions. You're getting your fair share, that's it. What's going to happen is that if they don't start playing the long game with the data, the transactions that are going to come go somewhere else to people that are, and their market just shrinks and shrinks and shrinks. We know what's going to happen with Countrywide. They'll go pop or potentially get bought by Purple Bricks. You look at more wasted data in a estate agency, right? You've got the typical transaction that an estate agent does is you go hunting, forget the 0 to 1 bit, right? So we're at 1. You've got the valuation, you've got the property, you've got the vendor on the market. So now you've got to go and find a buyer. You find the buyer, and then you negotiate the sale, and the two are happy. And we do all of the crap involved to get it to exchange, and we get our money on exchange or completion, and that's the end of the cycle. That's the end of the cycle in terms of Vibra or Dupix, or for most estate agents, that's the end of the cycle, and now we go looking to find another person to do this with. Right? But what about if it wasn't the end of the cycle? What about if the system would just send the new owner a welcome to the area moving in guide, a PDF of useful stuff in the area. Welcome to our area, here's some stuff that you might like. And that person goes into your nurture system, your automated nurture system. They see your stuff forever in Facebook, on the website, via email, and the system knows where they are. They've gone from the bottom back to the top. They're up here somewhere. They're just seeing like useful content. That's all they're seeing. We're not interrupting them. We're not asking them for evaluation. We're just giving them useful content until they show the system that actually they're here now, right? On top of that, what if the system automatically every year just said, another year's gone, do you want to know what your property is worth? Click a button and someone will get in touch with you. Just automatically. And that cycle just repeats itself over and over again forever until eventually, one day, at some point in the future, they become the new seller. And you find a new buyer. And the new buyer and the seller get together, you make some more money, and the system starts again. And that is a life cycle, not transaction. That sums it up. Like, we just work on transactions. We're killing ourselves with work. It's just not, it doesn't have to be that hard. If you've had an estate agency for 5+ years, 10+ years, some of you even longer than that, just imagine for a minute, I know it's heartbreaking, what would happen if all your data was in a system like that? It would make it impossible for me to open up in your area. I can't do it. It's impossible. You're 10 years of that going on. I've got no chance. You wouldn't need to send leaflets, because the reason we send leaflets is because we don't know everybody's name and email address. But you do fucking know their name and email address. They're in your database. Half the properties you've probably sold at some time or another. It's just too complicated to dig it all out. I spoke to an agent last week who's spending £7,500 a month on leaflets. And believe me, it's working for him, right? He's only got 2 branches. They get about 200 instructions a month. So it's like, go for it. I mean, it's working. But you don't need to do that. £7,500 a month spend on Facebook is like the spend of a global company. That's mental. You can't, as an estate agent in a local area, you can't spend £7,500 a month on Facebook. Like, it's not possible. I can't. He's spending that to reach 100,000 people. You don't reach 100,000 people in Facebook for 500 quid, if that. You'll still have change. So all of that stuff just goes into the funnel. Now, think about this. What if you sent that moving in guide to all completions in your area? Not just yours. It's pretty simple, right? It's pretty straightforward, isn't it? Send all of them the moving in guide. It's a flyer. Welcome to the area. Go here to download our moving in guide. And the funnel starts filling up. And the system just takes care of it all. You don't even have to think about it. And that is what builds these walls around your company, these data walls. That's what stops people from opening up next door to you. It's actually, I've got a slide in here somewhere further down. It's actually never been easier to open an estate agency. If you think about the tools and the stuff we've got at our disposal, if I want to open an estate agency, if you've had an estate agency in your neck of the woods for 10 years and you've built a good reputation and you do your leaflets and you do your canvassing and all that stuff, I can open up next door to you, spend some good amount of money in Facebook and go toe-to-toe with you. It's never been easier for me. In fact, I can do it from my bedroom. I can go to any one of you's areas, anywhere in the country, or even over in Ireland or anywhere. From my bedroom, I can start running ads to your local area from my bed. All right? It's never been easier. But it's never actually been harder for an existing business to transfer over because it's a mindset shift. It's like, whoa, this is blowing my mind. You have to do this stuff because you should have these walls already. Like Google and Facebook and Amazon and Apple, these companies, they can't be caught. So when you combine data with automated nurturing, that's what happens. Apple becomes the most valuable company on the planet. But it doesn't happen the next year or here or here. So this is where it falls down for most estate agents. We're small business owners. We need cash flow. I need to be able to pay my VAT bill. He keeps sending me these fucking green letters, right? So I get that. I understand all of that. And I understand the fact that you may well still door knock or do any of that shit, right? But there has to be a long game going on as well. It's got to be. And that's where it results. It ends up here. You 7-11-4 people. There's no way of 7-11-4ing someone in a day and going like, whoa, this guy, look at that. He didn't want to sell his house. Now he does. And he's going to pay us 2.5%. It's not going to happen. And you've got to figure out the messages. You've got to figure out like how does that funnel actually work? You don't have to figure it out before you get it going. Believe me, like I can switch you on. You can get it going, no problem. And it'll be 1,000,000 times better than what you've got going already. But over time, you'll realise the beauty, the value of it all is in the content of you really having the time to sit and think, what would be useful for people in our area? Right? And only you can figure that out. What would be an awesome experience for people who are going to try and sell a property through us? How should all this stuff work? And the system will take care of the marketing for you. The same thing happens with Amazon. They start here with books and then here everything in the world. And Facebook, here they start with universities, here everyone on the planet. At Facebook, I was reading the thing the other day that said Facebook they're so valuable now, they can afford to give smartphones to the 1/3 of the planet that are not on Facebook with a data plan and Facebook. So literally they're off the charts. That's what happens. This is the difference between companies that do this and companies that don't. So everybody starts on zero and everybody has a good couple of years when they first start because you're starting from zero, right? So of course you're going to have a 100% increase in your profit. And then after about 2 years, or 4 years, you get to this point whereby business is pretty stable. Some bills still come a bit unexpected, and there's ups and downs in the market, but generally we know where we're at with it. This is kind of what it's going to be, and that's about it. companies that have nurture systems in place, it doesn't make a great deal of difference in the short term, because as I say, like, you can't nurture someone in a day. They're not ready. They're at the top of the funnel. But over time, it makes just phenomenal amounts of difference. I mean, you guys know it already. If you think about all that data that's in your database. Think about Countrywide. Think about if we could get our hands on Countrywide's data, clean it up somehow. It's just ridiculous what would happen. So, guess what game these guys are playing? Purple Bricks. They might not make it, right? I know everybody's happy to have a go at Purple Bricks, and like, I'm not a big fan of them. I don't really care, but they don't care about selling houses. They're just collecting data, and they don't really know what to do with it either. But they don't care because they know that it becomes very valuable, and it becomes very difficult for anyone to go into competition with them once they do figure it out. There was a time with Facebook, I can remember clearly, where people were like, yeah, it's all very good, but how are they ever going to make any money out of that? Right? How are they ever going to make money out of this? I watched a news clip a little while ago from 1999 or something of these two CNN reporters laughing at Amazon about how ridiculous it is, and that they're apparently not even projected to make a profit for 10 years. Like, they really think that people won't go in bookstores and buy books anymore. So they don't even know the strategy. They're just collecting the data. And guess what? If you're the investors and I'm pitching it to you, and you understand that, and I come and I say, look, I don't really know what we do, but if I could get all the home mover data for everyone in the UK, and then maybe everybody in Australia and everybody in America and everybody in Germany, I know they've come out of those markets now. That'd be valuable, wouldn't it? And then someone might say, yeah, but that's gonna cost us a bomb. It's like, no. We've got these people that think they can make a living out of it. Like, they're going to do it for us for free. And then when they figure out that they can't make a living out of it, they'll leave and we'll get someone else to do it. And they'll just do it all for free, and we'll get all the data. So they're just playing the long game. At some point, they'll either switch on whatever it is that they decide that makes money. They can open up branches if that's the problem. They can bring in people to run chains if that's the issue. But they probably already know the stuff that John Abbott's talking about. They're just playing that game. So building a data-driven business is all about starting. Tom at Sanjfest said 80% of winning is beginning, right? And that's so true with data-driven companies. None of us even know where the data goes. The artificial intelligence that will come afterwards, that will process the data, that will tell us amazing things, like, none of us even really know. But what we do know at the moment is that we're not storing it in a viable format. The stuff that's in your Vibra system is not of any use. It was built for a different purpose. You can go into a current CRM and enter a contact as Mr. and Mrs. Burgess, and that's seen as quite a useful thing because it's a shortcut. But it's pointless in a data-driven company, because when the system tries to find me in Facebook, who's it finding? Like, Mr. Burgess or Mrs. Burgess? Like, which one is it that's looking at our website? And when you put in the email address, hasn't got one. It's just fucking bullshit. Of course they've got an email address. Like, you can't live in this world without an email address. So some of the systems that, if you're working in a state agency, some of the systems that your bosses might want to put in place, you might just see them as like, oh, more shit to do. But it's very, very important. The data is so important. That's where all the value is. It will actually make your life so much easier in the long term. This is where I was talking about before. Like, the crazy thing is that it's just never been easier for me to start an estate agency, and so hard to switch one over, because a lot of you guys have got successful businesses. Like, cash flow isn't an issue. Things are working. And I can tell you now, they will carry on working. That guy that's spending £7,500 a month on leaflets is going to carry on working for him, no problem. He can just keep doing it until one of you guys do this in his area, and then he's fucked. Whoops. But literally, I mean, we've seen it. We've seen it with all these other industries. It's like, just why are we not doing this? So the good news is that it's still almost day one in a state agency. There are some people in this room I know that use our systems or other systems to do this stuff, and they're having phenomenal results with that, but it's still really only day one. There are not many data-driven estate agencies. I'm shocked if I ever come across one. 90% of all the world's data was created in just the last 2 years. That's crazy, right? Just the last 2 years, 90% of the whole world's online data. So even if you are a bit behind, you're not that far behind. You're not that far behind at all. You're ahead of, I mean, let's think about it. What is there? Maybe 120 people in the room. So you're probably the 120 most at the front of the queue of the whole industry in the UK at the moment. So even if you haven't started, right, you're quite far ahead even just by being here. And the wrong question to ask is, how much extra money will this make me? That's the wrong question to ask, because it's not really about how much extra money it will make you. In the short term, probably not a lot. I mean, as I say, like I've seen people using our systems literally triple their fees over maybe a few years by working on the whole oversubscribe thing. But a lot of that comes down to, you know, them just having more time to think about this process and understanding some of the things that we spoke about today. But the real question is, like, what happens if your competition does this before you do? It's not a question of how much extra money we can make. It's a question of, like, what we don't want to happen is this, where the competition are now working on people that aren't even thinking about selling their houses yet. I can guarantee some of them people who are in Purple Bricks nurture systems, they're already sending them useful content. They're already being the nice guy. And gradually, they'll move towards the market, and you won't even get called in until suddenly the whole thing shrunk down to the point where just before it goes pop, you go, oh, I know what we should do. Poof, finished. Right? It takes a bit of time. You end up here. I don't know if they can ever get back from it. It would take a long-term vision to do it. Or worse still, you end up here. Right? So play the long game with the data. Stop just putting it into systems where it's just dead-end data. It doesn't go anywhere. You put it in and it does nothing. There isn't actually any other viable options. The one with all the names wins all the games. Like, that's it. There's no other viable option. So stop doing this stuff and start doing this. It will just make your life a whole lot easier. We run systems, we run all these systems that do this for people. They don't have to think about it. But whether you use our systems or whether you try and find another way of doing it, just take note from what happened in the past with other industries and do it one way or the other. So that pretty much wraps it up for me. You can connect with me, message me on Facebook or LinkedIn. I'm mostly on Facebook more than LinkedIn, but either platform, if you want to talk about any of this stuff, I'll be here obviously afterwards if you want to talk to me about it, or message us or talk to any of my team. I hope everybody's had a good day. I hope everybody gained some stuff from the day. I know some of you, your bosses might have dragged you along to the event, but hopefully, you got something from it. Before we finish completely, has anybody got any questions or anything that they want to ask just based on some of the stuff that I was talking about before? Or is everybody now just thinking about the pub? Cool. Okay. All right. Well, as I say, hope you all enjoyed it. Thanks very much for coming.